By the end of the year, I will have read 175 books, so I'm going to be giving you guys my top 10 reads of 2024 in this video. I also am going to share at the end of the video my top 10 romance reads by Black authors, because this is including like historical fiction, like contemporary fiction. Like I feel like because I'm such a romance girly and I share diverse reads so often, I wanted to share a specific space where I'm only showing like my top 10 romance reads by Black authors. I also am going to give you guys a few runners up, only 3, because I didn't want to get too wild with it. But yeah, hopefully you guys will have a good recommendation list after this video. Again, these are my top 10 and top 10 reads out of 175, and they also are in order. So you guys can see the ones that I loved the most by the time that we get done with this video. So let's start with the runners up. So the runners up are these 3 right here. These 3 books I feel like are so fun. The books that are in the top 10 list are really books that just like evoked something more in me. Like it made me have like connections with the book in a different way, like pulled out some kind of emotion. Like these books were truly just straight fun. And the first book is Just for the Summer by Abby Jimenez. Again, this is a book that I rated 4.5 out of 5 stars. Absolutely loved it from start to finish. It is such an easy read. There's so much dialogue, but again, it's one of those that I feel like I didn't add into my top 10 because it didn't like evoke a ton of emotion with like the characters or like connection with the things that they were going through as much, because like the story is just like fluffy and fun for the most part. There are like heavier topics, but it's fairly fluffy and fun. Really love this one. I feel like if you like storylines that have like a little bit of like heaviness, but not too much, you will really love this story. It's very fluffy, very fun, tons of dialogue, probably more dialogue than any romance book I've read this year. Also, Curvy Girl Summer. This book right here, 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it, and I was almost like putting it in my top 10, but again, it's one of those that was just purely fun. Like just purely fun. I do think that this story is like has deeper themes in it, but I feel like it would maybe connect with a reader in a different way than it did with me, because the main character in this, she really struggles with her family just like telling her how she should live her life and like how she should look and like who she should marry and like all the things, and she's like on dating apps and stuff. For me, it was like pure fun. But like, I'm also not on dating apps. Like, I do not have family meddling in my business. So I think that if you're someone who maybe is working through those things, you could really resonate with her as a character. Again, 4.5 out of 5 stars, and I was so close to putting this into my top 10 reads of 2024 because it was so freaking fun. I enjoyed every bit of it. And then the last book in my runners up is Funny Story. This is a book I also rated 4.5 out of 5 stars. Love this one as well. I think the thing that I love the most about this is that it had a lot of dialogue, but the story was like super fast paced. Like the pacing of this was wild. If you're someone who's never read anything by Emily Henry, or you've read books of hers in the past that you didn't really like, read this book. I feel like this is a true romance girly book, whereas some of her other books like Book Lovers and Happy Place kind of feel like contemporary fiction and not as much like romance. So the romance girlies I think will really love this one. I like that the main guy character in this was very different than the usual main love interest that you'd see. Like he wasn't supposed to be like conventionally attractive. Like he didn't really have like the best job. Like you don't see that, and I like that this author kind of turned that on its head. I do think that I connected with this character with the fact that she's like always trying to please everyone but herself. But there's just something about it that like that next level of depth that I always look for in a book, I just didn't really get there. But again, 4.5 out of 5 stars, so good. Wasn't in my top 10 reads of the year, but still a really great runner-up. And now I want to share the 5 books by 5 romances by Black authors that are in my top romances by Black authors of the year. So I have 10, but I'm sharing 5 in my top 10 reads of the year. Does that make sense? So I have 10 books in my top 10 reads of the year, okay? That's all genres, you know, all the things. But 5 of those books are romance books, and they are by Black authors. So in total, with these 5, that is like all of my that is all 10 of my top 10 romance reads by Black authors. Does that make sense? I hope that makes sense. So I'm going to share 5 reads here, which again, I say that these are like runners up because they're not in my top 10 reads of the year, but they are in my top 10 Black author reads of the year for romance. So the first one is The Kiss Countdown. This book is one I was super surprised by because I haven't really been in a fluffy romance mood lately. Like, I just haven't really been wanting to read it as much. And I think it's because I read so much of it in the past that I just was like, like, it's okay, like, whatever, like, it's fine, like, you know, there isn't really a ton of depth there. But I still love this type of book when it's done well. This did not feel predictable at all. This is like a fake dating situation. It felt very, very realistic. And I cannot wait for her next book. I cannot believe that this is her debut book, like the first book she's ever written before. Just so wild to me. Another book is The Mixtape by Brittany Cherry. I rated this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. Brittany Cherry's books are just so good, but I think I love this one because not only is it just like so much depth, it's Black love, it is sharing how someone is navigating through depression and how that can like really take a hold on not only you, but like people in your life as well that love and care for you. It also talks about a single mom and how she's like working through life. So I feel like if you connect with any of those things, you'll really find so much depth in the story. And that's the thing that I feel like going into 2025 that I want to really look for is depth. I want books to make me feel something. I have so many books that now, like end of the year, I've wanted to annotate, but I wasn't really big into annotating at the beginning of the year, and I think it's because I was reading a lot of books that didn't pull out that additional like emotion that I so desperately look for in books now. This one definitely did. It made me cry, and seeing someone work through just grief and depression at the same time, like you realize how not only hard that can be, but how hard it can be to like pick yourself back up. And you really can like empathize with the characters in this book. And another book is Keep You to Myself by Brianna Janae. This was actually a read towards the end of the year, so I was surprised that like it even made it onto the list because again, it was like towards the end of the year. But I've read one other book by Brianna Janae and loved it, and this one was pure fun. I think that her books are some of the easiest reads, like Natasha Bishop, like Brianna Janae, like they're books that I always recommend to new readers, and this is one I will continue to recommend. And I think that I also liked it because it's usually like a super rich guy and then a girl that's maybe like down on her luck, and that was kind of reversed in this story. Like the girl was actually super, super rich and the guy was kind of down on his luck, so I got to see the girl be like, oh, okay, like I love you for who you are, like, but also let me make your life a little bit better. And I really like that. But also you can see that the main character in this book, he also is really working hard to like get the life that he wants. So it's not like he's just like sitting and doing nothing. This book also has so many things that just like pop out of the woodwork that you would not expect. So again, it's one of the reasons why I'd recommended this to new readers, because I feel like when you're reading a book for the first time or getting into reading for the first time, you need books that just like hook you and you don't want to stop reading them. And this is one of those books because like so much stuff happens. And another book that I love that has so much stuff that happened that is also a runner-up is Love You Always by Lauren Lacey. I was very close to putting this into my top 10 reads, but there were just some other books that like took the space. You can see that this book is beat up. And I think that this book reminds me a lot of the Magnolia Park series, not in the writing style at all. It's very, very different, but in the sense that like it's messy. Like the characters are messy, like they just make bad decisions. The love interests in this book are very messy. They have a found family that feels very real, like you feel very connected to everyone in this story. But the main characters in this book, it's like, come on, break up. or get back together, or break up, but like figure it out. Like, what are you gonna do? And this is a book that I really enjoyed for that reason, because I've connected a lot with messy characters, and I think it's because I don't have it all figured out. Like, I'm 32 and I'm still trying to figure out like how I want to like live my life, but reading about characters whose lives aren't together makes me feel very seen, very validated. And you see this friends to lovers story from start to finish and how messy it can be, and you just will realize like my life really isn't that bad. So really like this one. It's definitely in my top 10 of the Black romance reads and books by Black authors that I've read in 2024. And then the last book is And Then Life Was Beautiful by Asia Monique. I was so surprised by how much I loved this story, because it has a pregnancy trope. Like, so many people have said that like I won't like the pregnancy trope, like they don't like the pregnancy trope, and I ate it freaking up. I ate it up. And this book right here is also another book that is great for like new readers. It's very easy to read, and also a lot of stuff happens, which I feel like keeps you really invested. It's the second book that I've read by Asia Monique, but the first one I read was like a novella. So I was kind of just like, oh, I don't know like how I feel like about, you know, this book, but that book in particular was like very short, and I think I've realized that I just like long books a lot better. Like, I like them a lot better because I can connect with the characters. So yeah, these are all incredible books. Rated this one 4.5 out of 5 stars, and also rated this one 4.5 out of 5 stars. So I have a lot of great books here, high ratings. Again, these are all books by Black authors, and these are all romance reads by Black authors. So these are 5, and there's also 5 in my stack. So we're gonna go through those. I'm pretty sure there's 5 in my stack. So yeah, this right here, these are all the top 10 reads of 2024. I wanted to share the runners-up because I think the runners-up are also important. It was very hard for me to choose all of these books, but these books are all in order. So let's start with this first read right here. Actually, I'm gonna put these up here so that way I can like reach them easier, because I don't have to bend over and get the books. I cannot believe how many books I've read this year. My goal was 175 books. Did not think that I would reach it, and the fact that I've read as many books as I've had honestly blows my mind. I don't know what my goal is going to be next year. I haven't decided if I want to read less and like, you know, maybe focus on reading thicker books, or just like keep the ball rolling and like do what I'm doing now, because I've loved what I've been reading. Like, and I already said that I feel like 2025 is going to be the year of 5-star reads, because this year I really honed in on my interests. And again, I can see my interests so vividly through all of the books in my top 10 reads, and they're all books that pulled out so much emotion within me. So the first book number 10 of my top 10 reads of 2024 is Between Friends and Lovers. This book was beautiful, like so beautiful. This one is about a girl who she's kind of in a love triangle, but I think the thing that I connected with the most was that she was like pining over this guy who just had genuinely no interest in her at all, but he kind of was like stringing her on a bit, and he also happened to be her best friend. I think the thing that I loved about this was that you see her growth, because she's like, I don't know if I want to continue to be friends with him because he's kind of like stringing me on a bit, but also he's like being friends with my old bully from high school. Like, does he even care about me as a person? And then you see her start to kind of like go her own way, do her own thing, and then her life really starts to flourish. You also see her working through depression, and I think that that is something that I really enjoyed reading about in a story with a Black character, because I feel like that is one of the like least talked about things, not only in books, but just like in my community. I feel like so often people will not focus on like going to therapy or like working through your struggles. And so I really, really love that so much. I think that it normalizes how debilitating depression can be, but also it shows how it's good to have people in your corner that can like help pull you out of that. And you can see that so much in the love interest here. Like, I loved it. I loved it so much. I think that this is the only book out of this entire stack that wasn't a 4.5 out of 5 star read, but I kind of think now I wish that I had rated it higher than 4 stars. I don't know, I just think that there's some books sometimes that'll stay with you, and if they stay with you, it's like, is that more impactful than like the rating that you gave it? And I'm realizing that like sometimes the books I'll read, it'll be like wrong time, wrong book. Or what is that right? Yeah. It's like if I had read this book at a different time, maybe I would have been like, this is a 5-star read. But again, I feel like when I put books into Goodreads, I leave the ratings because at that time, that's how I felt. And then later on, if I reread the book and feel differently about it, then that's when I will like change the rating. So that's the only one that is 4 stars, but the rest are all 4.5 out of 5 stars. The next one is The X-Vows. I think I love this one so much because it reminded me a lot of Love in Other Words by Christina Lauren, and I read that book every year. I did not put that in this stack even though I reread it this year because I've already read it, and it would just be in my stack every year. So like, I love that book, but this one reminded me a lot of that because it's a friends to lovers, but like second chance romance. This girl, she is helping her best friend with his wedding, and her ex-boyfriend is also helping as well. And so they kind of have to team up to like figure out how the heck they're gonna make this wedding happen. And lots of mishaps happen, but I think the thing that I connected with most with her is like she gets so much validation in how her friends see her, and I saw myself a lot in her with that. And again, all these books I connect with on a deeper level on like so many different things, and I've realized that like those are the books that stick with me. And I think because she is so like dependent on that, you see how she like can't say no. Like she always has to be like, I'm the yes girl, like whatever you need, like I'm a good friend. She also really gets scared of her friends leaving her behind or forgetting about her or not needing her. And a lot of that comes from she just like, you know, hasn't really had those strong bonds throughout her whole life. And whenever she gets these friends, she like sees them as family. So really resonated with the story. 4.5 out of 5 stars. That is book number 9 on my top 10 reads of 2024. Book number 8 is When I Think of You by Maya Ariel. This is such a great read. This is not going to be a read that everybody loves. I'm going to say that right off the bat because it's about a couple that they dated for a long time, 7 years prior to like the present moment of the book. And they kind of like rekindle their connection because they like realize that they still have feelings for each other even after those 7 years like has been passed, but something happened to like make them break up. And in this book a bit, you kind of see that like maybe it was the guy's fault and like maybe he didn't make the best decisions. And I feel like a lot of the time in books, you either see like, oh, it's the girl's fault, or oh, like the thing that pulled them apart wasn't that big of a deal, but it's like, it kind of was in this, but you also kind of understand whenever you like learn about it. But the way that he handled it wasn't like the best. And so I think that this book gave me a lot of like, cause like so many people, they've read this book and it's like kind of torn, where like some people are obsessed with it and some people are like, girl, like he's not treating you well. But to me, like, I feel like we don't give like characters enough grace, and we act that like every romance book has to be absolutely perfect for it to be a beautiful love story. I don't think that the way that they broke up and got back together maybe was beautiful, because like he literally has a girlfriend in this book, and then it's like, you know, things happen and like, you know, maybe that wasn't the best. Like maybe we could have made some better decisions, but even within that, like I still feel like this book just shows how real love and like connection can be, and it doesn't always have to be perfect for it to be beautiful, if that makes any sense. I don't actually, does he have a girlfriend? Now that I'm thinking about it, I can't remember. But anyway, very good book. This one is book number 8. And now book number 7. And I actually had a hard time putting this at the number 7 rank, but there are so many good books in this stack. and it is Blue Sisters by Coco Mellors. This is a book that made me realize that I love contemporary fiction. I love it, love it, love it, love it, love it. And I definitely want to read more contemporary fiction in the new year. I definitely want to try new authors in the new year because this is an author that I have never read from before. Didn't think I would pick up one of their books literally at all, and picked it up and was obsessed. It's about a girl who three girls who are navigating life after their sister passes, and the grief that they go through and how they navigate grief, all so vastly like different, is something that I feel like I will not be able to ever let go of. I want to go back through and like read this and like annotate it and everything because it was just that good. But again, this did make me realize that contemporary fiction is something that I want to continue to read in the future. The next book is a book that I've definitely talked about so much, so you guys are probably gonna be like, okay, are we hearing about this again? But you have to, because it's on my top 10 reads of 2024. And it is Our Secret Moments by Janisha Boswell. This was one of those books that was pure fun, but I think the thing that's like put it over the top, because I didn't connect on like a super deep emotional level with this, but I think the thing that put it over the top was the tension in this book. I miss tension. I miss tension. I miss pining. I miss when a guy like falls hard and is obsessed with a girl. Like, I miss that. I feel like in books so often they like jump straight to the spice and they jump straight to them, like, and the girl's like obsessed with him and like he's kind of like cool guy, elusive. Like, no, he is obsessed with her. And I also really fell in love with the friend group in this book. I think that this author is one of the most underrated authors that I read this year. Her writing is incredible. I really hope one day her books are in Barnes and Noble. I hope people start reading her books. Like, her books are just fun, but like, they're so good too, like the pining and tension. And I finished Our Secret Game, which is written by her as well, and love that book as well. Like the tension and pining, like all of it is just, you don't see it anymore. So that's why I had to add this book into my stack. And this one is definitely like up there. Like it wasn't, bottom of the stack. Like I just love her books, and I rated this one 4.5 out of 5 stars, as I did with all of the rest of these. So now we're at, what is that, 10, 9, 8, 7, 6. We are at number 5, and it is The Personal Librarian. And this was a book that made me really want to dive even more deeply into books by Black authors that are like focusing on Black history or just like historical fiction. I didn't even know like the depths of this story, and this is about a woman who is JP Morgan's personal librarian, and whenever she is his personal librarian, like the whole world is just like, wow, she has such an incredible job. Like, she's so like, well-renowned, like rich, like all the things. And she is actually a woman who's passing for white. So you see her trying to hide that so she can continue to provide for her family. And it really just was such a great book. It's one of those that has made me want to continue to dive deeper into historical fiction. And I feel like that's gonna be one of my like top genres of next year. Like historical fiction, contemporary fiction, and romance, I think, are gonna be like top, because I'm noticing that like in my top 10 reads there's no thrillers, which is really surprising to me. But I think it's because I love thrillers, but they don't leave like a lasting impact. And I know everyone rates like their top 10 books very differently. Like maybe you only have like books on your top 10 reads that just made you happy, it's like they just were enjoyable, like they were entertaining. But I feel like for me, the ones that I connect with the most and that like always end up in these stacks are the books that made me feel something, made me want to be different, think differently. Like, and this one made me want to dive deeper into the history of just like, I don't know, not even just like the history of like the last 20 years, but it's like, I want to go super far back to see like, what have I missed? What people have made a monumental role in society that like I haven't like dove into their story yet, and just like find out more about them. So love that. And now we're in our top 4, and that next book is The Four Winds by Kristen Hanna. I feel like this one has to be like high at the top because this was a 5-star read for me. And the reason why I feel like it has to be at the top is because it was the first historical fiction that I've ever read as an adult. I used to read historical fiction when I was like younger, like middle school. I don't know if you guys remember like the book Fever. It's like a scholastic book. I remember reading that, really loving it. I also read a bunch of books that were like focused on women who like did cool things. And of course there's like the American Girl like stories, you know, like when I was younger I liked reading those things, but something in my brain made me think that history would be boring as I got older. And this is the first book that got me back into it. So I just love this book. I actually am just so surprised, not surprised by how much I love this book, but surprised that I love this book more than another Kristen Hanna book that so many other people have been obsessed with. And you guys will be seeing that in a vlog coming up. But this book, I wish more people read. I feel like this is one of Kristen Hanna's like least talked about books. Like I feel like I hear about The Women, I hear about The Nightingale, I hear about The Great Alone, I hear about like Firefly Lane, because obviously it was turned into a TV show. I don't hear about The Four Winds as often. And The Four Winds needs more hype because this book is about the Dust Bowl and it's about a woman who is trying to just like survive, and she actually has to trek halfway across the freaking, well, not halfway across the world, but she has to make a long trek to try to get to an area where she can like actually live, like, cause everything is just demolished during the Dust Bowl. And as she's traveling, you see like her really struggle with like, are we gonna make it? And like as a reader, you're like, I don't know what's gonna happen. But then you realize this stuff actually happened to people. Like this really happened. So again, that was what made me like go down my deep hole into just like reading more about historical fiction, like people or just like time periods that I don't know a ton about. Because in books, I feel like when you're reading like history books, you're reading about what happens. It's just like this happened in 18 whatever, or this happened da, da, da. But in these books it's like, you know, we had to eat outside and like had no home, had no shoes, we had to walk for X amount of miles, and it's like people had to do that and somehow they survived. So, and survived to tell the tale too. So I really have fallen in love with this genre, and I definitely will continue to read more of it. Now we're in our top 3. Now I just read this book, which is wild to me. I just read this book is gonna be in my wrap up for next month. I read this book end of the year, like barely made it onto this top list, and it is my number 3 book, which is so surprising to me. And it is The Wedding People. This book is phenomenal. I have so many underlined sections in this book. I rated this book 5 stars. Actually all the books from like The Four Winds and up, they're all 5-star reads like of the year. I think the thing that made me resonate with this so much is like, you connect with the character because you see how she sees the world. Like this woman is planning to take her life. That's like literally the whole plot of the story. So she goes to this hotel and she decides to do it there. And while she's there, she actually ends up realizing that she's the only person at that hotel that is not going to this specific wedding. And so you see her perspective from when she gets to the hotel, and then you see her perspective just like, you know, as the book continues. And I think what I liked about this book is the author like makes you understand how she got to where she is, and like you feel how desolate life like feels from her perspective. And like I think that this book, my biggest takeaway, again, I rated this one 5 stars, no question. And like when I started thinking about like my top 10 reads of 2024, I was like, oh, bet. I'm like literally, I'm picking this book. Like it was one of my top books I thought of. But I think the thing that I left like with after reading this book was like how perspective is so important. Like perspective of the future and like what could come from good things or bad things, and like how you can change your life in an instant. Like how you can meet a new friend and, you know, meet a new guy, get a new job, like literally like that. And your whole life could be totally different. And this book really encapsulates that so much. And so again, 5-star read for me. I loved it. I also don't really like flowery, wordy writing. Like and that's why I think sometimes certain contemporary fictions, I just am like, we can leave that on the shelf. I don't really care for it. But this one did not feel like that at all. It was very to the point. Like it didn't feel like the author was trying to just like make you listen or read extra words just to be like, you know, profound. I really, really, really love this book. And another book that is one that I've talked about so much all year and was a 5-star read for me, and is one I already cannot wait to read again, is This Could Be Us by Kennedy Ryan. I think the reason why this book, and again, I feel like all these top 10 reads are books that I have had a deeper connection with, like on an emotional level, but the reason why this one connected with me is because the main character is learning to love herself like throughout the entire book. You see her go on solo dates, you see her try to lean into her career, to her hobbies. Like, she's a mom, and she also has had like never really had a time for herself throughout, like, you know, the first book. This is the second book in the series, but like you just see how her life has been run by other people for so long, and she really takes hold of her life in this book. This is about a woman, Soledad, who's like really going through a hard thing, and she has to learn how to stand on her own, but she's never really done that, or hasn't done it in a really long time. And I think that there needs to be more romance books focused on self-love, because we always focus on romantic love, which is like, that's great, but it's like, who is gonna tell us how to love ourselves, and other than like freaking self-help books, you know? And I also always tell people, like, you can learn a lot from romance, and I feel like people don't believe me. They're like, oh, okay, sure you can. Like, you're reading your little fluffy romance books, but like, no. When you read books like this, you will understand what I mean, because Kennedy Ryan is like beating you over the head, being like, you need to take time for yourself. You need to love yourself. You need to make yourself a priority. You need to learn to say no. And like, you learn all of that in this, and it is such an incredible book. This was also like Amazon's top romance read of the year. She is a best-selling author who is gonna literally have a, I think, like TV series that John Legend is producing for the first book in this series. So you need to hop on this. The second book comes out next year in March. So if you read the first and second book, you'll already be caught up. And the third and last book, I think it's the last book in this Skyland series, when it comes out, you'll be able to read it immediately. So the first book was also a 5-star read for me, and it was on my top 10 reads of like last year or whatever, because I was obsessed with it. So you cannot go wrong, but this one felt very, 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 very different. Loved it from start to finish. And the last book. Can you guess what it is? I feel like you already know. Like, you already know. Like, you don't even need me to tell you what the book is, but I will anyway. And it is Into the Dark by Jessa Hastings. I started this book in 2023 and finished it like the first or second week of 2024. So it ended up being in this video. My top 10 reads of 2024. This is a 6-star read for me. I've never said that I have a 6-star read, because I always have felt like, I mean, why say you have a 6-star read? Like, there's literally a 5 scale, you know? And I just feel like this book literally transcends. And what's funny is, like, one of my friends at the gym, she was telling me the other day, she's like, oh, I'm about to start the Magnolia Parks universe. I was like, oh, okay, that's cool. Comes back like a few weeks later, she's like, I am like on the last book. And I was like, are you serious? She's like, yeah, I couldn't put it down. But I think the reason why I'm obsessed with this series is because they feel like real people. Like, you never know what's gonna happen. There's no predictability. Whereas some romances, or just books in general, feel a bit predictable. Like, there's, you know, the time that they meet, and then like there's some kind of thing that they have to work through, and then it's like good again, and then it's bad, and then they're together at the end. Like, you get that happily ever after. The author of these books has said that she like cannot guarantee that all characters will get a happily ever after. But that is genuinely just life. But this book is the 5th book in the series. You have to read the rest of the books first. The first book I did love, but I know some people who don't, and I totally understand why, because one, you do have to like messy characters and messy books to like the series. You cannot go into this series expecting to get like perfect characters, perfect people, perfect easy storyline. They're messy, they are unlovable, unlikable, but that is literally human nature. I feel like Magnolia Parks universe is just a study of like what it is to be human, and this book is like the culmination of all those books put into one, and seeing their growth and like how they went from being so broken, so messed up, so like backstabbing, like making the worst decisions ever. And like, honestly, like, they have a good friend group, but they kind of also have the worst friend group, because they're not like really the best to each other at times. And then you see their growth in this book, and it's like, it's so inspiring, because it's like, okay, if these people, granted they're like stupid rich, but like if these people can like get their head on straight, then like I can too. But also, I think that this book has one of the most honest and vulnerable, like, beautiful representations of grief that I've ever read in my entire life. Like, And I feel like so many people who have like gone on their own journey of grief will really resonate with this, because I've read a lot of books over the last year where the characters are grieving. Like obviously Blue Sisters was one of them, like so many different books where you see people navigate grief, but this book literally feels like the character took like thoughts from my brain and put it into writing, and it just felt so validating. So I definitely think that you should read this book. The characters go through so many different things, and if you haven't read the series, please start it. All of the books for me were very highly rated. I rated, I think the first two 4.5, and then the other two before this one, 5 stars, and then this one 5 stars as well, or 6 stars. So I just feel like everyone should read this series. It is so good. And it's also going to be turned into a TV series, and the directors or producer or whatever of Euphoria are actually going to be the people who are bringing this to life. So I'm really excited about it. So I hope you guys enjoyed this video of my top 10 reads of 2024. I've read just a wild amount of books this year, and I feel so grateful to have you guys just like watch my whole journey, like reading books that I didn't love, reading books that I did love, talking about them, learning from them, and just like growing together. It's been such a fun year, and you guys will get one more video before the year ends, and you guys will get like some wrap-ups of like recent books that I've read, and you will see me try to get to my Goodreads goal. And yeah, so I hope you guys enjoyed this video, and I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye guys.